Hey, Dylan Kelly here, host of the Wave Break podcast. Excited to get into this episode, but first, here's a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Wave Break podcast is brought to you by Klaviyo, the growth marketing platform most recommended by other business leaders. Listen, in uncertain times, you need to be supporting your community and growing relationships with your customers. It's going to be appreciated, it's going to be remembered, it's going to be shared. And in good times and bad, this type of communication that's open and empathetic with your customers is key. This is a key theme that we've been talking about at Wave Break. I've been preaching this on the podcast. And when you're communicating with your customers in this way, the best way to do this is with email. It is and always will be one of the best channels for delivering communication like this. And what I love about Klaviyo is that email is one of its core offerings. And their personalization that you can do inside Klaviyo is just, it can't be beat. And when you leverage that personalization driven by a 360-degree view of the customer, these emails are going to feel more relevant and they're going to drive even stronger relationships. And Klaviyo gets it. They're not just, some company. They understand how challenging it is right now for every entrepreneur. It was hard to get your business off the ground, and navigating these times is even harder. And if you're feeling overwhelmed with growing your business, know that you're not alone. Klaviyo is here to help you build relationships across any distance for your brand and create memorable and meaningful email marketing moments that last a lifetime. And that's how you build a successful e-commerce brand. And this is why I love Klaviyo so much, because they're on the same page with me and Wavebreak. Is like, we're not just about making more revenue. That's great. But what this is really about is an opportunity to create an amazing community with your customers. And the best way to do it is with email. And if you're not on Klaviyo, you got to get on Klaviyo. Visit klaviyo.com to schedule a free trial. That's KLAVIYO.com. You're listening to the Wave Break podcast, the show where I interview the people behind the fastest growing e-commerce and direct-to-consumer brands. I'm your host, Dylan Kelly, founder and CEO at Wave Break. Wave Break is the email and CRM agency for high-growth D2C brands. With ad costs rising, we help brands maximize lifetime value by building and optimizing world-class email and SMS marketing programs. You can learn more about partnering with us at wavebreak.com. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Wave Break podcast, e-commerce leaders. Really excited for today's episode. Today, we're joined by Daniel Hodgdon, founder and CEO at Vegamore. In this episode, packed with a ton of actionable insight. Long story short, summary on Vegamore, really awesome brand, recently raised $80 million in minority growth investment back in April of this year. They're just crushing it. They grew from 0 to $1 million a month in 6 months. Dan shares exactly how he did it, and then he also shares the levers that he found for scale, including data, what they look for to drive and maximize subscriptions, and a lot of other really tactical advice. I had a super fun time doing today's interview. There's a lot to learn from it, especially if you have a subscription business, or if you have any business in general, just how Dan thinks about scaling and growing a brand. A lot to learn in this one. So without further ado, let's jump right into this one. Dan, did I get the last name right?
Flawless. It was perfect.
Perfect. I've been practicing all day. But anyway, Dan, super excited to have you on the show. You've got an incredible story, which we'll get into, of founding a bootstrap brand. You're growing really fast, going from just 8 people last year to over 45 now, 10 of those joining in the last 30-ish days. So before we dive into the story, your thoughts on growth and how you've grown this business, give us a quick highlight. Like, how'd you get into this? What is Vegamore? And what's your vision for the company? And then we'll dive into more specifics.
Yeah. How did I get into this? Well, I have a bit of a weird background. Part of it by education. I'm a software developer and had an early .com days. I'd set up a bunch of payment gateways. And so I was really, familiar around payment processing. But as a sort of a hobby, just to kind of, I grew up farming. My father comes from a long line of New England dairy farmers. He was the only one who managed to escape. When he was 17 by joining the army. He went on to become an engineer, and we ended up living all around the world. He was a pipeline engineer. So we lived in the Middle East to Southeast Asia, Bali, Bangkok. And so but one of the things as a kid growing up, he always would make sure that I didn't have life too easily. So he wanted me to learn the value of a dollar and hard work. So my summer camp was being sent to the farm back home to, his family in Vermont, where they would kind of trade me off as like indentured like slave labor for not just kidding, but it sort of felt like that at the beginning as a kid. But from the time I was like 8 years old to the time I was like probably 18, I spent 3 months a year on that farm, on various farms in Vermont, like owned by my relatives, and really kind of developed this fascination with agriculture and regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture. These people, my family, they didn't have a lot of money, and basically everything that they consumed, everything they either raised or grew on the farm, and you had to be very careful with the land. If you treated the land very carefully, the land would be good to you. If you weren't good to the land, you didn't eat like during the winter. So it was it was a vastly different experience than what I had like the rest of the other 9 months of the year. But just being a city kid, basically, as I was growing up all over the world, these capitals, I didn't know where a potato came from, or I thought it grew on a tree like a tomato. I was kind of stunned to find that they grew underground my first couple of years on the farm, and so but basically I took that interest over time. Started consulting on sustainable agriculture projects like throughout Southeast Asia, and helping source raw materials for botanical actives for beauty companies, and just because I was familiar with the region, I was familiar with agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and I really saw a way that I understood and saw the difference and the impact it made on the lives of the people that were able to benefit from that, and these like basically underdeveloped or underprivileged or disenfranchised parts of the world. And so I set up a business doing that sort of on the side, that just kind of, the more I dabbled in it, just to kind of help some friends at first, and then it became bigger and bigger until next thing you know, you're selling stuff to multinational conglomerates, international hair companies and beauty companies and whatnot. And that's kind of like that's the background of where my I guess sustainable agriculture, biodiversity, being into plant botanicals and actives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes
I'm not
total
sure if I
sense.
answered the question. That's not how I started Vegamore. Vegamore was a result of, after doing that for several years, seeing how so we're the world's largest, and another company I have, we're the world's largest developer producer of like a lot of the botanical oils from Southern Africa. So everything from marula oil to baobab to Zaminia to Kalahari melon, so seed oil. All these things are beautiful, amazing botanicals that have all kinds of different properties that are conducive to everything from microcirculation to they're antimicrobial. They reduce inflammation, and these are all things that are issues that when you think about hair wellness, hair health, these are all things that impact hair health. And I had a lot of customers that were using our actives or our botanicals in their products. But if you did the math, and you could look and see like where you're using like maybe 0.003% of marula oil in this particular hair care product, which, and they have a big, huge tree of a picture of a marula tree on the bottle, but there's only a small percentage of it in it. It's for marketing claims, basically, is what they're citing studies and saying, oh, it has this ingredient in it, but they weren't really using it at percentages that would actually have a significant impact, nor did they actually go to take the trouble of making it bioavailable. I would show this research to these different clients and say, like, look, if you actually you tweaked it this way, or you put this much more, and you could actually have a benefit or result that was visible that people would be happy with. But they weren't really interested in doing that. Basically, I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but like they are more focused on the bottom line, the unit economics, they are, and whether or not the product actually provides the benefit that their marketing would imply. And so I thought, and the reason they kept like coming back to me was the reason why they did it that way is because it needed to be profitable. And I was convinced that you could actually do it the right way, with the right like quantities and the right ratios, and making it bioavailable and still be profitable. And so Vegamore was sort of like started as a case study to prove my point. But then it actually ended up working really well, and it grew into the brand that it is today. It's still my mission. Part of our mission is to show what can be done with plant actives used in the right combination ratios and the right strains and made bioavailable, they can significantly outperform a lot of the stuff that we use, synthetics for, or synthetically derived chemicals or things that actually aren't good for you. We can produce better results with plant actives if properly formulated and delivered, but without the harmful side effects that these other actives, or chemicals that are used in these other products today. So that was what I set out to prove, and so far we are like living proof that it can be done. And my hope is that other people can see that and then maybe hopefully follow suit. Just like, when small companies like Credo or Detox Market start off with the clean beauty movement, there are a lot of retailers that completely resisted that until finally chipping away bit by bit. Now it's table stakes to be clean as a beauty company. So hopefully my hope is that rather than just having clean products or clean actives or products in your formulas, why not use them at the ratios where they can actually have a significant impact? And by the way, they should also be bioavailable. Otherwise, it's just marketing claims.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what year did you actually start Vegamore? Like, what's the official year one?
This year one was 2016, but that was like from nothing, like no money.
That's like the product.
It was kind of.
Or like, how did you even start? Like, you don't have you have a background in the product, but like, were you throwing together the first Shopify store yourself, like combining that software engineering background with the product background that you had, and you're like putting it up on Shopify, or like, what were you doing back in 2016?
Just exactly it. Like, I was doing everything from the, logistics, getting the packaging design, the formulations, the coming up with the marketing copy, the ads, the videos, building the site using our first Shopify template to get. I mean, you couldn't have done it without Shopify, that's for sure. And people would come up to me and go like, "Well, don't you want to build your own platform?" I'm like, hell no. Like, we produce products, and we produce, hair wellness products, and we want to tell our story and market them. I don't want to spend a lot of time. In fact, we did not have an engineer until a week ago. Like, we have that was our first engineering hire, was a week ago. And so we've done this all, like, a lot of it was me. I have to admit, in the beginning, I didn't really understand Liquid, and I hard coded a lot of stuff. I'll go back later and fix that at some future point in time if this actually works. And then, of course, you forget to go back and fix. I think at one time we hired a company, like a couple years in, to kind of undo like everything I did. It was like 6 months worth of awful, like, it's like playing Django basically. Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you're growing fast. You're like, oh, I'll just do it this way for now because it's quick and I'll get to it later. But like, later never comes. No, that's Absolutely. Awesome. So 2016. And then what were your thoughts in terms of marketing the initial product? Because that was kind of like, that was back when everyone thought things were hard. And it's like, oh, like, it's so hard to launch a brand. Like, this is impossible because like not that many people have done it. Now we realize things are getting a lot more difficult with, increased CAC and all these things. But like back in 2016, what was your initial strategy for getting the product out there? Was it like, hey, let's put some money into Facebook ads, or what did that look like?
It was exactly that. I mean, let's go paid social, and Facebook was the platform of choice at the time. We actually launched the brand in September of 2016. And we, it was basically cast a wide net, see what happens. And then like from those nibbles and then let's create lookalike audiences, and again, you have to remember, this was like, this is pre the 2016 election and the whole like aftermath that came, and in the subsequent year, in 2017 in February, when Facebook, because as a result of that, and the data company that was used by that administration to collect data, there was a lot of things that changed in February of 2017 that made it like, that was the first kind of blow. But prior to that, it was pretty easy to scale, and it was actually beautiful. And I think we got from zero revenue, no PR, nothing, no celebrity endorsements. It was just like spending $50 on this ad to see if it worked, and checking out this lookalike, test and learn. I don't think we spent more than $75 on an ad to see if it would checked or not. And we got from like zero in September. I think November we were doing 600,000 in revenue. In December we got to 800,000. January we had 1 million. It was insane.
Amazing. What ad spend was that too? Like, what do you remember the ROAS you were getting back then?
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5x. It was beautiful. It was those beautiful days. Yeah.
Amazing.
Like, now I feel like it's like shooting fish in a barrel. At the time I was like, oh, it's so hard, but man, it was so easy.
I know if you go back, you just knock at every rich person's door and be like, hey, if you give me $1 billion, I can turn it into $5 million. No, but that's amazing. Okay. So so scaled really quickly. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So were you prepared to scale that quickly, or what was like, did you have the infrastructure because of all the work you'd done previously, or like, how did you keep up with, funding all of the ads? Cause I know you bootstrapped it initially. And so like, there's a lot going on there. So like, how did you scale the ad spend that quickly? And then also how were you able to fulfill that quickly too?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so here's the deal. So in order to, when you got a 4 or 5 ROAS, right? So you're spending $1 today, you're getting like, $4 to $5 back tomorrow. It's, it's e-com. So you get your money in your bank account, in 24 to 48 hours, right? So we're basically printing the money that we needed to scale at the time. When we first started off, here's the other thing. We didn't want to go up against big pharma. We didn't go up against like all these huge companies that had huge budgets to spend. So, in the hair spaces, which we always knew we were going to be in the hair space. So we started off with something that we thought, look, we got to prove credibility, proof of concept. So we launched with a lash and brow serum, basically first. They're very small components. As you can imagine, if you're putting like 4 ml into a little tube and you're selling it for $80, the margin on that's fairly comfortable. And so it was also sort of like what with lash and for hair, for example, you don't really start to see visible results because since we already have some hair, so it's little ones start popping up. You don't really start to see them till like 60 to 90 days. Whereas with lash, you see results in like, 2 to 3 weeks. With brow, you see results in sometimes as short as like 4 or 5 days. You have this bare forehead where you've like been tweezing for years. And like now these hairs won't grow back. But then suddenly after 10 years, you suddenly see little whiskers popping up in your forehead or on your eyebrows. You're like, oh my God, this is working, right? So the lash and the brow was just sort of like to give us to sort of prove the concept that we could have an impact on hair. And we thought that hopefully if we could, you would give us benefit of the doubt that if we could do this for your lashes and brows, what could we do for your hair? Just give us 90 days and we can show you. So that's kind of how we let off. That was a strategy, and wait until we established that. And then then pivot into hair as our primary category because we knew it was much larger. But in terms of for the ad spend at 4 or 5x, you can print your money.
You're just putting 5 times as much money as yesterday into the ad the next day.
Now you can't like, let's say for example, you spend 10,000 and you make 50. You can't the next day spend 20,000. At that time, you had to do it incrementally. You could only, if you just like doubled the, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's like spend like, 30,000, we'll make, 5 times through 30. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to do it incrementally. And at that time, I think we were between 5 and 10% a day was like the maximum we could do on a campaign. And there's also one of those things where like the content died really quickly. So it would like work for like, something that get like really good traction. And for us, maybe like a 7-day survival rate, used by day. After that, we would have to put in new content. So we were basically just a content producing machine with with someone in there like buying the media for that content and waiting till it died. As soon as it kind of like fizzled, you put in and we were probably putting up like 10 ads a day and with like variations of those. So probably like, 30 to 40 different variations altogether. And that was what basically drove the machine. We did get to a point where, we had, cobbled together some money to buy inventory. The MOQs, the minimum orders for the inventory was, felt uncomfortably high at the time. But then we soon realized we started doing our forecast, like we were going to run out by like February. And so I think December, we realized, holy, if this keeps happening, we were going to run, and we already run out of one product just because we hadn't had time to fill it like in time, because, and then we saw what happened when you have to take the foot off the accelerator on the Facebook media spend. Like it killed our growth guys. We're like, I never want to have to go through that experience again, where we get this thing going like this and we have to let out because you have to go and re-optimize. I mean, it's basically starting from scratch. So that was one of the things we learned early on. Never run out of inventory. Your growth team's going to like walk.
Right. And so is that something you still do to this day? Like, I guess, like fast forwarding to modern day, like, did you in February or whenever that was of 2017, have you just pressed the gas and then never quit since then?
No, actually, so February came, and so no longer did you get like a 4 to 5x. Now it's down to 3x. Still, I would like kill for 3x right now.
I know, right?
On a $3 million a month spend, yeah. And so so we basically. And at the time, you have to remember, like Facebook is basically a black book. Everyone claims they know how it works. I mean, there are all these theories. You meet all these groups, and people are like, oh yeah, they don't want the ads to look so DR. So they have this team in the Philippines that are like looking on the landing pages for where all the ads are going to, and they're deciding whether or not over this 24-hour period. Yeah, people like, oh, load the ads at 2:00 in the morning. It was like, it reminded me of like going to Vegas and like having people thinking they have a system to beat the house, which you're never going to beat the house. But like, that's what it kind of felt like. And so everyone was trying to figure out, is this a temporary thing? What's Zuck trying to do? Is he trying to does he not want our money? Is he only trying to get the money from the big guys now? Your established advertisers who would normally be advertising on TV, and he wants to get rid of all the riffraff. Everyone's trying to figure out, trying to get into their head. I mean, I have to give it to them. They never let anybody know. It's still a black box as far as I know. And like, so a lot of times the reps would tell you stuff and you're like, but it doesn't work out. What you're telling me when I try to do that, it doesn't work. And you have to kind of find out your own thing. I mean, I've worked on several Facebook accounts, and like, I got to tell you, they all have their own picadillos and you kind of and rhythms and it's just, I don't think it's, I mean, and people keep trying to make an AI that like will predictably, I haven't found one yet that there is not one that has worked to my satisfaction. But so when that big adjustment came, we pulled back on the spend a little bit. We were like, okay, like this is horrible. We're only getting like 2 or 3x now, and that was like end of days. And then, so, and then we realized that, the other thing that we learned right away was that we talked earlier about, trying just to spend, to acquire customers and figuring out how to make it profitable later on. I think what our version of that was, we knew that we wanted to be a subscription business. And so, but we knew it was much harder to convert a subscriber versus the straight sell. And so what we thought we would be able to do was like get all these people in the straight sales, and once they experience the product, we would offer them a value proposition so compelling that they would have no choice but to convert and become a subscriber. But when we and then when we tried to model that through, it just didn't work. And we were talking, why does it make any, like, here you're offering someone up to 50% less than what they keep coming back and buying it every month. Well, why won't they buy it at half the price just going into a subscription? And, we talked to a couple other people in the space, and one of the guys at Harry's told us, like, it was really nice. He said, basically, we thought the same thing. And what we hired a behavioral psychologist to look into it, and basically said that people, when they purchase something online, when you have caught their attention, and they make a purchasing decision, like when their minds are open to make that purchasing decision, that the way they make that purchase, that initial purchase, whether it's a straight sell or a subscription, like they're not open to changing their mind about how they're going to consume that product going forward for an 18 to 24 months. And so we were like, wow. Are you serious? And they're like, yeah. And I started thinking about myself, like, yeah, there's some products that I do, I have subscriptions to that I just forget to go and unsubscribe, but it's, and I've got other ones where I've, Nespresso, I drink 10 cups of coffee in the morning before 12 o'clock. Like, I always run out of those capsules, but because I don't know, I just wanted to buy it manually first to see if I liked it versus my espresso machine. And now I run out every month, and I still refuse to go and subscribe to it because I wanted to do it. I don't know.
It's so true. I'm the same way. Yeah, that's so true.
So when we learned that, I mean, they told us that their success rate in converting like a straight sell customer, no matter what the value proposition, to a subscriber was like 0.75%, right? We kind of like, all right, we doubled that. We were at 1.5%, but like that means for every 100 straight sell customers, you only convert 1.5 to a subscriber. They're like, so stop taking the easy way to get like all these guys in just as acquiring these customers and hoping to convert them. Like really create your funnel, structure your funnels such that you're getting at least X% of these people as subscribers, to begin with, because you will almost never convert them back over. And so when we kind of like had that aha moment, we basically started working on our subscription model. We got pretty good at like being able to obtain subscribers in 2017, but we realized we totally forgot about like, how to retain them. So we didn't spend any effort on that. I mean, at that time, I think we were like 5 people. So like, right. I'm like doing the packaging. I'm just doing, putting together the products. I'm creating videos. I'm doing, media buying. I'm doing operations. I've got like, we're doing fulfillment ourselves. But 2 people, of the 5 were just like filling envelopes and sending stuff out because we had ShipStation little printer, and that's how we sent everything out up until April of last year when COVID like was the sure thing. We're like, okay, we better move like fulfillment out of here in case somebody gets sick, and God forbid, and we have to shut the whole thing down.
Wow. Yeah. And so when you switched to pushing the subscription initially, like what was the big thing that really got got more people taking a subscription? Did you start to push it more as a subscription product? Like, hey, if you stop doing this, you'll go backwards. Like, did you integrate it in your advertising? Is it more like, oh, we just started offering the subscription as the default on the website? Or like, what did that actually look like to get more people to subscribe?
Well, initially? First of all, that 2017, we were still doing just Lash and Brow. So that whole subscription thing that we're trying to figure out was around the Lash and Brow product. And then I think we sort of figured it out towards, Q1 of 2018. We're like, I guess we kind of have this now. And then we launched hair. The problem with hair that we just assumed that everyone that had lash or brow issues would all have hair issues. And that was our bad, because that turned out to be not the case at all. So all the lookalike audiences, all the ones that we thought like would just be automatically, that cohort would, of course we want hair wellness products. If you do a Venn diagram of like lash, brow, and hair, like there's only a 5% overlap between like lash and brow and hair. So we were kind of dumbfounded. We're like, oh, we don't know. We have to find it. I mean, it was good and bad news. The bad news was that like, we have to go find out who she is and how to speak to her. The good news is that, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother customer, cohort that we didn't realize was out there. So we actually, I think it took us about 6 months to figure out who she was and how to speak to her, to get her on just from straight sell acquisition side. And then to answer your question about when did it change over, it's like, it was finally being able to find a way to communicate the message that, look, you give us 90 days, we'll give you beautiful hair, right? And so, and if you're going to have to, one bottle is a 1 month supply. If you're going to need 90 days, like buying one is pretty much a waste of time and money, because like one's not going to do it. If you're going to have to use three months worth to be able to see your results, well, why not like subscribe and get like, instead of paying it, full price for each one, it makes more sense to subscribe and get that whatever 20 to 30% discount for being a subscriber versus, plus you aren't going to have you're not going to run out. You're not going to have to remember, et cetera, because it's a product that works great when you're using it. But once you stop using it, then you go back to the way you were before, which is fine, but it's not any worse than. But it's like you start losing the traction, the progress that you're making. So you don't want to run out if you can avoid it. So I think being able to communicate, understanding who she was, being able to communicate with her, like what the concern was, what we were there to help her with, and then like 3, having her understand like, this is not, we're not looking for people that, your typical miracle in the bottle people where, hey, I'm the kind of guy that, if I join a gym or something, I want to get ripped after my second day working out. It's just not going to happen. But if you're someone that's like, willing to like, For example, if you're looking to lose 30 pounds in 30 days, we're not going to be able to help you. But if you're willing to put 90 days and to lose 30 pounds, it's the equivalent of that, then we're your people. We're there for you, and we will hold your hand through this journey because we want to be able to, and that's part of the next part of our, talk about data and understanding cohort analysis and looking at only going after those where you're going to be able to provide a positive experience. I don't want to spend time and money trying to acquire customers who aren't going to have an extraordinary experience with us. And so if your expectations are such that I want to have a full head of hair after 30 days, then we're going to disappoint. But if you're willing to give us 90 days, now that's a cohort that has real value for us, and we can provide real value for them. And so basically be able to communicate that message. So we got 30% of our new customers that we're acquiring every day, we're choosing a subscription model. That was sort of that break point. And plus making sure that we had retention was about 80%. So that combination for us was perfect. So that meant that whatever we spent on Facebook that month, we were going to be able to pay the Facebook bill because we had net 30 terms with them the following month, because the rebills would kick in at that retention rate and that subscriber rate at 30%, new customer acquisition going for subscriber and 80% retention. And then it was okay, now we can hit the gas and go.
Got it. And then what year was that? When did you roll out the new products and the new subscription models?
That would have been maybe
2018.
It was that was figuring out that was launching new products was 2018, and then finding that our lookalike audiences were completely wrong for that particular product or that particular space or part of hair versus lash and brow. That took us to probably till early Q1 of 2019, we kind of learned who she was and how to speak to her. And then we spent another 3 months trying to figure out how to communicate that message in our funnels about, 90 days is what you're going to need. And then September, October we proved this theory of that, it was working in July, and in August we pushed the pedal to the metal, and then we ran out of inventory because it just went. We didn't realize the retention was going to be so big.
Oh wow!
I was thinking maybe if 40% of the people stay in, that would be great, but it was more than double that. So we were
wow.
Oh, and we ran out and we're so we kind of put the brakes on again, which the growth team hated after making all that progress. And then come October, we had inventory back again, and we just hit the pedal to the metal and we never looked back.
Amazing. No, that's awesome. And then as you start to continue to grow and hit scale, that's when, I know one thing we've touched on before is that's when data becomes really important. I think now more than ever, that's going to be the biggest differentiator for brands who win, the ones who understand their data and are able to act on it. Because like you said, it used to be the glory days, you get that 4 to 5x ROAS, that's pretty easy. You just, put money in. We thought it was hard back then. It's well, now it's good luck. Seeing a return like that, you're really lucky if you do.
So it was the first time I went to Vegas, and I was waiting for someone to put a $20 in a slot machine, and I won $1,500 after the second pool. I was why do people work? Why don't they just come here?
I know, right?
This.
And then you lose the $1,500. I know, and that's really what Facebook feels like nowadays. Now Facebook feels like a slot machine. We have clients tell us that all the time. They're some days it feels like a slot machine. It's I'm ripping it. It's great. It's amazing. I love what I do. And then the next day it's nothing. But so now we're in a post iOS 14 world. So things have gotten even more difficult, one layer deeper. One approach you've taken to this is really diving in and owning your own data and really understanding that compared to, using different outside tools and everything's there. Tell us about your approach to really, because everyone talks about building a data-driven brand and making data-driven decisions. But I think you guys actually really execute on it well. So what does that look like on your end?
Well, first of all, I'm cleaning up the data, because we go back to that part where I was visually doing the Shopify programming myself. I had I think we have a single SKU that's got 7,000 different name variations. So that was a big, huge effort to go back and undo all the stuff that I did not realizing what it would lead to going down the path. But so we created our own data warehouse. Basically, we call it the Kraken. And so what it's supposed to do is everyone thinks about acquisition. That's what we're using it for. And we are to a certain degree, but we're also looking at it in terms, further on down the road. What is it? We look at acquisition, we look at attribution, but we also we really kind of want to dive down into much more detail than what you typically get. And that starts with your naming conventions for your ad. So I want to know that if we're showing, what converts better, is it the ad with, blonde haired girl with brown eyes with a Cocker Spaniel sitting in an inside or outside Western exposure light during magic hour? That's the one that moves the hair serum the most. And we're going to keep trying to beat that. But like I got, and that's the one that moves the most for this particular cohort and this particular lookalike audience, right? And then what is that? And so let's look at the acquisition, look at the, the conversions for that particular audience, for this particular, everything from the ad copy to the CTA is all in that data that's being fed to us, right? Now, let's look at that customer later on. Like that particular customer was brought in. I mean, what was it that brought it? Was it a discount? Was it like about our social impact? Was it about was it a hair? Was it a brow? Was it was it a care? Was it a maintenance person? Was it someone that's looking for? Was it a supplement? These are all things that you look at from the product level, and then we look at what from those particular cohorts, which ones tend to have like the longest, like the biggest LTV. So you bring in like so you bring 6 like cohorts in from various campaigns, right? At the acquisition level, you have your biggest one, right? The one with the highest AOV, and this, in descending order, right? All from 1 to 6. Now, once you get them once you have them as customers, and once you start treating them with SMS and emails and et cetera, like that number 1 might drop down to number 4, number 3 might become number 1. So we want to look and understand our customers and what triggers like lead to, and which one of them bringing in will have the potential to have the most customer satisfaction, therefore the the greatest LTV for us. And then we look down in terms of like, the data tells us about how people, what's their behavior, how do they order, what kind of things if someone orders a shampoo and conditioner, are they also more likely to order the scalp detox? So when we start looking for customers like that, we start creating bundles and merchandise. We're also very concerned about EBITDA. So we're looking at from a cost of goods perspective, what things should we be merchandising on the website for these particular cohorts, and what kind of emails and SMS campaigns does all that data tell us that it provides optimum like return on these particular on each specific cohort. Does that make sense? I know I covered a lot and then maybe oversimplified it, but
no, it does.
You see what I'm saying? Okay.
No, I definitely, yes.
Well, I don't want to spend a lot of money on like on a one and done. Like someone, it's easy to get to acquire a customer, but let's say like I'm break even on my cost of acquisition, right? For on each customer, but and let's say maybe but if that person is like, again, if it's someone's looking for miracle in a bottle, like, a one and done sort of thing, that's not a customer that's going to have a great experience. And that's not someone that I think that we want to, we don't want to have anyone associate our brand with a bad experience. So I'd rather not like spend advertising dollars or impressions or anything on displaying to that particular cohort. But I would instead rather, maybe it's a little more expensive to acquire this other customer, this other cohort, but if the LTV backs out, like as far as that's what I want to focus on. And that's what this data warehouse, we call it the Kraken, because it goes into everything from acquisition to LTV, life cycle, and all the way into like, from a product level detail to like a merchandising suggestions and being able to understand what the best combination of products will be for the end benefit of that customer, but also from an EBITDA standpoint, like what we need to work on, like, oh, wow, our top selling products are the ones that we make the least profit on. Okay, well, we need to figure out how to make these things more profitably.
Right. Like, I know. And I think there's a lot of brands who it's kind of been like, it's been easy to ride the wave of that 4 to 5x ROAS originally. And then it's 3 and it's like, oh, that sucks, but it's still okay. But as CAC gets higher and higher, it's like exposing more and more. And a lot of brands, they're going to uncover in their data that, oh shoot, our most popular products are the lowest margin products or different things like that. Like, and when it comes to your setup, I mean, your setup is freaking awesome. I feel like it's like the, I don't even know what to call it, like the Rolls Royce of data setups, it sounds like. But like at what point, like what size, how much data does somebody have to need to use something like that? Or when does it make sense? Like, should you be doing, like if let's say I run a high growth brand, I'm doing between 5 to 10 million a year. Like, do I need to go that advanced with it? Or then I should just like,
I mean, if you get that, that's a lot of data you've got enough to see patterns there, right?
Got it.
So I would say when you're first launching a brand, you definitely don't need it. You need to collect the data. Just throw a net. see what comes in, and then play around with it. But at some point, I would say, depending on your rate of growth, if you're on track to like a $5 to $10 million a year, I would start like really looking at the data. You're going to have enough data there to tell a story, right? If you're able to look at it. There's one thing being able to collect a lot of data, but we have a lot of data, but unless there's someone that tell you what story that data is telling you, that's the other thing too. In the beginning, we used to have so many, like, oh my God, like there's so many, how do we slice and dice this? And like, you need like, at least analytics is one thing. Like, what about your BI? Like, what is this data telling us what we should be doing? And you want your finance guys in there looking at that, and you want your retention people, you want your loyalty people looking at it and say, hey, what are all the other levers that we can pull and to basically manipulate that to our advantage.
Right. Yeah. And that's so true. It's like you need the data to find the stories, and then you scale up what's working. But then also, I think what a lot of people get tripped up on too is they see the data and then they start thinking like, oh, only data to make the decisions. They end up not trying as many new things because then they just want to be so data driven that they don't try new things. How do you guys balance out like trying like new things that maybe aren't necessarily proven by data yet, but that's more important than ever with, when you're thinking about like, you need to pump out even more creative now than you need to do in 2016. Like, how do you think about that and still ensure there's creativity in the organization?
Well, because I encourage, like, my whole thing is like the Kraken, it needs data, it needs content for food. That's the fuel that drives it, right? And so if you keep proving the same like theory over and over again, you're not really learning anything except for like you're really good at this one big lane. What about people that are, what about, like, for example, postpartum, hair concerns? What about women with PCOS? What about, like, there's so many different that we don't know until we try. And the great thing about this is that it doesn't cost that much to go and try some. You might need to build like a funnel. Okay, that's great. And so we've got like our evergreen, we've got our campaigns, and those are things that are always turning, but we always have what I call the mystery categories. We have two a week that we post up, like, got no idea this will work, got no idea if there's a market for this, got no idea if this look alike or if these interests are going to be ones that will respond to this, but let's try. And you don't know. So one of the things that we had, someone with a Sephora interest, someone with a, vegan interest, but it actually, healthy eating turned out to be like a really great category, an interest group for us, that we just didn't, pet lovers also another. There's things that aren't necessarily that correlate, directly to what you think but like, and you won't know until you try. And so, and you don't know what even like one ad or one funnel, how will that, the thumbnail, the video, the journey that they're taking through that funnel, the retargeting and everything, all that, you have to take that into consideration. You won't know until you try. And so we're constantly like throwing stuff up there to see, like, is there even, and we even do like product development like that. And sometimes I'm like, this is part of our product roadmap. And but we've never tried to sell, like, for example, supplements before. Like, we just launched the Grow Well hair supplement. So we don't know. We have no idea if we can like be strong in this, but it makes sense with our entire, like, our hair wellness system. It's an inside outside approach. It's completely holistic. So 360. So for us, it makes perfect sense. Can we communicate that to the customer? Can we help them understand that? And even for us, you have like your marketing people and your creative people, like, oh, okay, what's our go-to-market launch strategy for this new category? I'm like, it is this. Put up a landing page and see if anyone nibbles, right? And that's it, right? Mm-hmm. And then if it's basically, we get a few orders, we send some emails out. Okay, what did that tell us? What did we learn from that? Oh, so the people that actually responded on an email, they're the people that ordered this, that, and the other. Oh, that was from this lookalike audience. Now let's go create some ad campaigns around that. Let's go spend no more than $250 on each one to see what that tells us. And so it's like, it's test, learn, iterate, boom, try to beat the last like A/B test, and then move and try to beat that. It's if you're not like constantly throwing out new nets and trying new things. And again, the lovely thing about paid social is you can do it in such small, like, you can get, and I can spend $75, $80 on a test and know that, like, okay, this isn't going to get traction or not. And if you're keeping score, if you're keeping track of all the things that you've done, So it's not just, you're not relating to someone's memory, which that's how we used to do it. Like it's pretty easy. You have really smart people that go in there and look at all that data and go, oh, here's probably what we should do the next time we launch a supplement based on what happened before. And then we can maybe go in a little more confidently. And again, I'm all for just testing and learning. I don't, when you launch something, it doesn't have to be a huge success in the beginning. Like, let the people respond to it. Let's get their feedback. Oh, it's way too sweet. Oh, it's way too tart. Okay, even that, and those data points are good. So that before we launch something in a huge way, let's get the customer input, and then let's modify if we need to, pivot, and then go back again and do it right. We did it with the supplements. We had a whole supplement range. We did it last year, and we sold out. But we got a lot of feedback, which made us realize we need to go back to the drawing board and work on the flavors, right? And so it's hard when you're trying to do everything natural and no sugars, no carbs, and trying to make really horrible plant adaptogens that taste horrible. They're beautiful adaptogens, but they taste like dirt. Like, how do you make that delicious, right?
Right.
So
no, but that makes a lot of sense, because I think people, like I said, like people get a little bit too data happy, and then they just want to make decisions based on the data. But you're right. I love how you have the rule too. Well, not necessarily the rule, but it's like, listen, we got to feed the Kraken, because otherwise we're not going to get those learnings from it. And so many brands, I think too, you're totally right. Like, they just need to clean everything up, actually see what's there, understand the stories that are currently being told, and then start there as their starting point. Cause I think there's a lot of people with just a discombobulated mess of data across Shopify and Facebook and all these different platforms. It's not in one place. They don't really understand it. Like, they're operating on hunches, but we're getting to the point in the game where you can't just operate based on hunches anymore. You can, but you need to really back it up and optimize it with the data that you do have. Cause that, like you said, that's the only way you're going to learn. I know we're coming up on time here. I keep talking about this for hours. I feel like we barely peeled into it, but before we sign off, like anything else or like words of advice you'd end on? Like, if you're looking back at yourself in 2017, that's a lot of the people who are probably listening to this podcast. Like, they're growing their brand. They're in the early stages. They don't have 45 people on their team yet. They're still the 5 people. They're running to go get boxes right now, listening to this podcast. What words of advice would you end on for them?
Couple things. One, I would say, and this is the one I keep telling my team all the time, is like, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, or the good enough, right? Because like, some people want to get everything just right before you read, whether it's an ad, whether it's a landing page, whether it's a product even. And it's like, you know what? There's this whole, concept around, or school of thought around MVP, right? Minimum viable product. And for me, like, if you can like do that, and your testing bed is you don't have to do a SWOT analysis. You don't have to go out and do like consumer survey. The market's right there in your Facebook ad console. Like, they will let you know like whether this works or not. That's your test bed. And so like, and because you can test really inexpensively, and if you're quick, you can like pivot based on those learnings. So I would say like just get something out there before trying to make it perfect. And then and because like, you're going to think all this, going to have so many data points. You're like, okay, this is it. And then when you put it out and like the rubber hits the road, you're like, oh shit, we were wrong. and so you spent all this time and effort to make this perfect thing that you're going to have to completely undo anyway. And that's kind of like soul crushing to have to like pivot and, completely start from scratch. Another thing would be like, whatever you're going through, like, it's all going to work out in the end. And I think for me, like in my life, and like just of course of being an entrepreneur, is just like, there's so many so-called failures, but they're just things, okay, we don't do it that way. Right. And so we learned what not to do. And the thing is, I find what some people do is they get so focused on, if one door closes and that they thought this was what the path is, this is the business, this is the journey. You fixate on like looking at that closed door and like and being frustrated and resentful that that's closed to you, instead of like looking around at the 3 doors that may have opened up behind you. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's everything will work out in the end. If it's not worked out, that means this is not the end yet. So like, everything is an opportunity to learn something and grow from. And you just take, I think what enabled us to like grow this business so quickly and rapidly was because I'd done so many things in the past that didn't work out exactly right. And so like, this was like all those failures and little successes, like, that basically that gave us the education to basically come up with a concept that actually seemed to resonate with people, and to be able to deliver it in a way without going through. Back in the day, there wasn't really D2C beauty. It was kind of it was just, we were kind of one of those early pioneers into that space. Now that everyone's in it, but like, again, there's always something to be learned and gained from something not working out the way that you'd hoped it would. So, if you believe in yourself, just keep plugging away. Eventually, like, that door will open, and just make sure that your eyes are open and you can see it and be able to walk through and take advantage.
Yeah, that's so true. It's really easy to beat yourself up in the day-to-day. Like when it goes from like that dream that feels really good to those doors being slammed in your face, like you're saying, it's like, man. And then the grass always looks greener on the other side. But you're right. Like it's through, like especially if you're listening to podcasts, like you've always survived all those moments when the door was closed. So you're okay.
Like, I'm so glad we didn't get VC money. We were like, there were a couple of times like, we got to go out and raise. And some really dark times, and like getting all those doors like slammed in our faces because we weren't above 10 million yet. It's like, oh no, you're too little, come talk. And then like, I am so glad we did not, because like the best time to ask for money is when you don't actually need it. And so
right.
that it turned out to be a huge blessing to us. So that, we recently closed our first round, and it was wonderful to be able to do that with a partner, not out of desperation, but because you were interested in the value that the partnership brought, the value add, and not cash. It was more about like, what can these guys do to help us, get towards our end goal. So again, at first there were times when I had cashed out my retirement fund, and I went, this is the worst thing in the world that could have happened. And it was actually the best thing.
Amazing. Yeah. You always end up fine. And like you said, if you're not fine, you're just not done yet.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll be fine. I love it. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show today, Dan. Where can we go to learn more about you and your company?
Well, at vegamore.com.
Amazing. It's that simple. We'll link it up down.
You got to spell it because no one can spell it.
Yeah, we'll link it up down in the description. Yeah, it's vegamore.com.
There you go.
Vegamore.com. What's the sales pitch? 30-second sales pitch. Why should somebody use Vegamore?
Oh my gosh. Don't that was all ready to go. Go to the website and find out.
All right. If you want to see their funnel that is generating a 30% click-through rate on the subscription and 80% retention, go subscribe now and see if you retain a month. No, maybe that'll work.
Because the way you're doing your hair currently is all wrong. I guess that would be the long and the short of it. Like everything you thought you knew about like hair care is actually the opposite of what is actually the reality. The truth is. So if you want to find out what that truth is, go to vegamore.com.
Oh, perfect.
Dylan, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wave Break Podcast. If you're not subscribed on iTunes or Spotify, go hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes. And if you're not on our email list, go sign up at wavebreak.co/join. You'll join other e-commerce leaders at brands like Skims, Cartier, and Walmart, and thousands more, learning exactly what's working in e-commerce right now. You won't want to miss it. Sign up at wavebreak.co/join. It's free. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Wave Break Podcast. I hope you have a wonderful day.